talk about a couple things. So we're starting the unit on the Cold War. We're going to talk today about the post-war Soviet Union, and we're also going to talk about post-war United States. So there's a couple things that I'm going to walk you through today to start with the Soviet Union. The first thing, we're going to take a look at some pictures. Okay? The first thing that you notice after World War II is that the Soviet Union is a lot different than the United States is coming out of World War II. Okay? So, I give you some images here. 4.7 million homes were destroyed in Russia. 2,000 towns were destroyed in the Soviet Union. 70,000 villages were destroyed. Okay? And so, the other thing, I really like this graph. It's actually out of the textbook, which I know that we don't use much in here, but it gives you a good comparison. Okay? 17.7 million casualties for the Soviet Union in World War II. And if you compare that with the United States, 407,000. So that means for every U.S. fatality in World War II, there were 43 Soviet fatalities. And so I give you, kind of this rundown of pictures and stuff to show you that, there's going to be discussions that take place. And, in terms of war, a lot of times the countries have discussions about sacrifice, right? When they're starting to divvy out what we're going to do with the post-war world, okay? And so when the Soviet Union looks at the post-war world, they say, well, listen, we had 4.7 million homes destroyed. We had 2,000 towns destroyed. We had 70,000 villages that were destroyed. For every U.S. fatality, we had 43. Okay? And so, they look to the United States and they say, was your towns destroyed? Were your cities destroyed? How much did you sacrifice? Okay? So the Soviet Union is definitely going to take that into account when we start talking about the post-World War II world. Okay? And of course, the post-World War II world that we're talking about now is the Cold War. Okay? And so the Cold War, basically, if you wanted to put a date on it, would be from the end of World War II until about 1991. Okay? So we're talking about a large segment of time. That's why when we start to discuss your book, and today we're talking about, the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement, we just kind of lump everything together in this class. We're just going to talk about it all since it is such a large segment of time. Okay? So there's a couple things to consider as we move on. And again, I'm just kind of giving you an introduction here. The number one Soviet interest is to protect against German invasion. Okay? And the next step to that is, well, so how are we going to go about doing that? And one of the things that is that we talked a lot about Adolf Hitler in here. And, we went to the Missouri History Museum and we studied propaganda and the Holocaust and stuff. Okay? Hitler was a evil, evil person, correct? Killed 6 million Jews. Historians estimate he killed upwards of 12 million total once you factor in gypsies, the mentally handicapped, homosexuals, so on and so forth. Okay? Joseph Stalin is still in power after World War II because he was a member of the Allies. Historians estimate that he killed up to 25 million of his own citizens, okay, through a series of purges. Okay? And you can see here on the right, it says citizens expected to spy on their neighbors to conform to communism. Okay? Well, what do you think that results in? If I'm your neighbor and I don't like you very much, what do? Turn you into the government. And then you disappear and go bye-bye. Okay? And that's what would happen a lot. So Stalin would figure out who his political enemies are and he would get rid of them. Okay? I told you the famous story of Stalin. The guards that were guarding his room. Okay? Stalin had this order that if you were guarding my room, under any circumstances, I didn't want you to come in. Okay? And so to test them, he started screaming for help. And they rushed in, and he had both of them killed. Okay? That's the kind of person that we're dealing with here.
So he portrayed everyone who didn't conform to communism as his enemy.
As the enemy, right? And the way to deal with the enemy is to get rid of them. Okay? And of course, when we talk about the Soviet Union, we're talking about communism. And communism, you know, its basic tendency is a complete takeover of land. There's no private ownership of land. Okay? So there are no private houses. There are no private businesses. Okay? That's different from what we just got done studying in terms of Nazi Germany, okay, which is fascist. You had private industries. Schindler's List, Oskar Schindler. Okay? He had a private business. Okay? We'll talk about starvation later on, probably next time when we start to get into it. Now, let's look at, very quickly, just to give you some kind of introduction to post-war America. And when we start talking about post-war America, we got to talk about what we're going to do with those servicemen that come back. Okay? And one of the landmark bills that was signed after World War II was the GI Bill. And you can see that it gives soldiers some priorities here to ease them back into everyday life. So it gives priority to veterans. It gives them 52 weeks of unemployment benefits. How many weeks are in a year? 52 weeks. So it gives them a full year of unemployment, which is a lot. Okay? A lot of time to be able to find a job. It gives them a stipend of $65 a month, $90 a month if you had a family. Okay? And one of the biggest things that it gave, and this is still around today, is zero down payment, low interest loans to buy homes. Okay? So you have all these servicemen that are coming back. Okay? They have to find a job. They have to find a place to live. The GI Bill is going to be able to do that. And it had a big impact on society. One of the things that I found probably the most interesting is that by 1947, nearly half of all college students were veterans. That's a pretty incredible figure. Half of all college students in 1947 were veterans. 4 million veterans bought homes with low-interest government homes. So the housing side of it. The next thing that we'll kind of touch on a little bit here is suburbanism. Suburbia. Okay? This is kind of interesting. A survey taken in the 1950s found that Levittown residents were most concerned with two problems: unleashed dogs and world communism, in that order. So that gives you kind of the sense of where people stood, okay, with communism, the average person. Okay? And suburbia is, you know, I had a college professor one time talk about the city. Okay? He had lived in the city his whole life, okay, until he got married and had kids. And he said, you know, city life is okay when you're single, okay, but it's not for everybody. And it's not for everybody, especially when you have families. What would be some drawbacks of living in the city if you had a family?
No space.
There's no space.
Crime rate.
Okay, there could be a lot of crime in the city. What else? It's dirty. The schools may not be up to par. Okay, maybe. Okay, so all those things, especially the space component, factors into it. Okay, so, but, you know, we live in kind of a rural area where, you know, the saying is, you're 30 minutes from anywhere, right? Isn't that what everybody says? Okay, but most people like to be, I know I like to be, right on top of things. I don't want to live in the city, but I like to be able to drive 5-10 minutes and go to a restaurant or go wherever I want to go for entertainment. Okay? And most people are that way increasingly after World War II. Okay? So you begin to see all of these suburbs pop up. Hey, how many of you have been to Chicago? Okay? How many suburbs are in Chicago?